Hello everyone and welcome back to another riveting episode of Newegg TV. My name is Paul and today I'm going to be doing an unboxing and overview of this new motherboard from Gigabyte. This is the Gigabyte Z87X UD3H, and as the name implies, it features the Z87 chipset as well as the 1150 socket for Intel's new 4th generation Core processors. Let's start off with a closer look at the retail box. Apart from the model name right there, this is an ultra durable series motherboard UD5 Plus, which means it's better. Hence the plus. 5 is the series name for ultra durable that they've been giving to the new Z87 boards. This board also has a new heatsink design, which is ultra cool, kind of like Kyle. Also ultra performance, all international rectifier digital CPU power delivery. You also get a UEFI dual BIOS, so BIOS backup, and you get 10 USB 3.0 ports on this board, which they've accomplished by adding a couple USB 3.0 switches onto the native USB 3.0 that's available through the Z87 chipset. Here on the back we see some more information, such as indicating that this is the LGA 1150 socket. Do bear in mind that this is not backwards compatible with Sandy Bridge or Ivy Bridge, aka LGA 1155 processors. You will need a new Intel 4th generation Haswell processor, LGA 1150. Apart from that, they've used durable black solid caps throughout the board, so higher quality components for a longer lifespan. 15 micron gold plated CPU socket, so they've used some additional gold there to enhance the connectivity, or at least improve the connectivity between the CPU and the socket. You also have an Intel LAN with electrostatic discharge protection. Again, here you have some text regarding the IR digital PWMs with IR power stage ICs. That's international rectifier, and that's for the digital power delivery for the CPU and the memory. Also, as part of the ultra durable 5 series, this board features double copper PCB, or twice the amount of copper that they would usually use in a PCB of that thickness. You also have some onboard buttons for power reset and whatnot, an extra PCI Express power connector for providing some extra power to the PCI Express slots in case you're running a dual card configuration, for example. 6 fan controllers on the board. Some more information down here, such as 1 fuse per USB port. Also 3 triple USB power. You get a USB 3.0 header on the board that is always on and provides charging capabilities even while your system is off. For SLI and Crossfire support, you get 3-way Crossfire support for AMD cards, 2-way SLI support for NVIDIA cards, and then also you get a UEFI dual BIOS with LED indicators to tell you which one you are currently using. That's about enough for the retail box. Let's go ahead and take a look. Actually, if we could come in real close down here in the bottom corner, I did want to at least give you guys a look at the detailed specifications there. I'm not going to read those all off, but if you want to take a closer look, there they are to peruse. Let's go ahead and take a look inside the box. Inside the box we have, of course, the motherboard itself, which I'm going to finish on. We have the always important user's manual, so this is going to have all the details about the board itself. Certain things about the Gigabyte user's manual that I like and find to be useful is a block diagram that tells you where everything is connected to. You also get this sheet, actually a couple pages of this, which tells you everything that is integrated onto the board component-wise. Then you also have a walkthrough of installation instructions, which DIMM slots to use and that sort of thing. Always keep your motherboard manual on hand while you're doing your build. Apart from the manual, we also have a Gigabyte case badge right there. You can put that on your case. You also have your driver and utility disk right here. It's always going to be best to download the latest drivers from the Gigabyte website rather than using that disk, but it can often be handy, especially to get your network up and running. And here's a multilingual installation guidebook, same as the one I already showed you, but it's black and white and it's in different languages. For serial ATA connectors, you get a total of 4 serial ATA cables. They're all black. They're all going to be SATA Rev 1, 2, or 3 compatible, so they will work just fine for your newest and fastest SSDs. 2 of them have a 90-degree angled plug on one end, and then the other 2 have straight plugs on both ends. And you also get an SLI bridge right there, so if you're going for a 2-way SLI configuration, it's a flexible bridge, so you can use it with different slot spacings. If you are going for a Crossfire setup, I should say, from AMD, those bridges usually come with the graphics cards themselves. Finally, I/O shield right there for a closer look. They have color-coded inputs and outputs for all your I/O on the rear panel, as well as some squishy electromagnetic shielding on the back. And now we have the Z87X UD3H motherboard itself. As you can see, Gigabyte has gone with a black, gray, silver, blue color scheme for this board. I would say that it all matches quite nicely. You have a flat black PCB at the back, which I will give you a better look at from the back of the motherboard, although there's a bit of glare. Apart from that, we have some spring-loaded Phillips head screws for mounting your various heat sinks on the board, so you can remove those if you prefer to in the future. You get a total of 6 fan headers on the board, starting with fan header 1 and 2, which are your CPU fan headers, right up here next to the DDR3 slots. That's 1 and 2. The third one is a system fan header right here next to the 24-pin main motherboard power connector. That's a 3-pin. You get another 4-pin over here above the PCI slots, another 4-pin down here on the lower left, and one last 4-pin down here on the lower right below the serial ATA. So there's all your fan connectors. You should be able to get a nice complement of fans in most computer cases that you might be building in. But next up, let's take a closer look at our components on the board. We're going to start off down here, as we traditionally do, in the lower right-hand corner with our front panel connectors. Gigabyte is going with the color scheme design here. You also have a little chart there below to tell you what's what, so that is handy. There's that system fan header I already pointed out. Clear CMOS jumper is right there, although the jumper's not on there. There's a button located at the top right of the board too, which I'll show you guys as well. You have 2 front panel USB 3.0 connectors. One of them is right there, that one. That one will give you a couple USB 3.0 ports. So this one is wired through one of the hubs and then through onto the Z87 chipset. Actually, 8 ports on the board are wired through a hub to the Z87 chipset. That would be 2 here, and then 6 more on the rear panel. And then the other front USB 3.0, which is up there, which we'll come to in a moment, is directly connected. You also get 3 USB 2.0 connectors right there, 1, 2, and 3. Each of those can support 2 USB 2.0 plugs. You also get a COM header right there, trusted platform module header, which is used more so in business applications, system fan header again, and then the front panel audio connector right there. This one actually has an amp connected up to it, so you get an audio amplifier. The audio chip on the board, which is right there actually, is a Realtek ALC898. It's a 7.1 channel audio, features 7.1 channel audio support. And that's pretty much your audio componentry area right there. PCI Express area is next, but actually right in here, if you notice these 2 chips, those are your dual BIOS chips. There's an LED next to each one, and that will light up depending on which BIOS you have currently selected. So you can switch back and forth between them, or also if one fails, Gigabyte has a really cool automatic backup feature that will back up the BIOS, which I find to be quite helpful since it actually saved my motherboard recently. It was a different motherboard, but it works. For the PCI Express area right here, top to bottom, first off I want to point out you do get a legacy PCI slot right there that Gigabyte has added on, so if you have an older sound card or something along those lines, you can plug it in. You get 1, 2, 3 PCI Express X1 slots. Those are all Gen 2 support, and those are routed through the chipset as well as this one right here. You also have a PCI Express full-length slot down here at the bottom. It's wired up for X4, and this one is also going through the chipset. This one, however, will also support 3-way crossfire configurations, so you can put a third AMD card in there along with 2 more if you want to go with a 3-way configuration. The main event as far as PCI Express goes is going to be this top slot here, which is fully wired up for X16, and then this slot here, which is wired up for X8. If you're running a single graphics card in the top slot, which is where you should install it, it'll run at X16. If you use both for a 2-way crossfire or 2-way SLI configuration, they'll both run at X8, and that is using all of the PCI Express lanes from a Haswell processor. Moving on to the right, we have a nice Gigabyte logoed heatsink that's providing some heat transference from the Z87 chipset. And the Z87 chipset controls, well, one of the coolest new things about Z87 chipset is actually right here. All 6 of these black ports are your native Z87 controlled serial ATA revision 3 6 gigabits per second ports. So that means you get full support on all of these for even the fastest SSDs that are currently available on SATA Rev 3. They've also added on another chip here, a Marvell 88SE9172. That supports RAID 0 and RAID 1, and you get 2 ports right here. There's also 2 eSATA ports that are on the rear panel I/O, and it's pretty much a one or the other option for you. You can use these or you can use the ones on the back. They're both routed through to the same chip, so bear that in mind if you're planning on actually fully decking this out with and connecting to all the SATA ports. The Intel supported ones here also do support RAID. You can actually do RAID 0, RAID 1, RAID 5, or RAID 10 configurations. You might also notice this is your PCI Express graphics supplemental power connector right there. It's just the SATA power port. This is not necessary in all configurations, but if you are doing dual graphics, or particularly if you're going to be overclocking, it's recommended to plug in a SATA power connector from your motherboard to that to provide some extra juice to your PCI Express lanes. Moving up the board, you have a red slot right there. This is going to be your good USB 3.0 front panel header. That is because that is the one that supports it's always-on technology as well as triple USB 3.0 power, which is going to charge your devices more quickly. So I definitely recommend going with this one first, and then you got the other one down there if you do have more than 2 USB 3.0 ports available on your front panel. Next to that, you have your main 24-pin motherboard power connector. There's that 3-pin system fan header that I already pointed out. You get a surface-mounted debug LED, which I find to be incredibly useful, especially if you're having any troubles getting your board up and running. You can reference the codes listed there with the manual to sort of tell you where the error might be occurring. On the top right side of the board, you have some voltage read points all up and down there. You would need to either use soldering or actually touch a multimeter to that in order to connect to those, but you do have those available if you are going to be doing some higher level overclocking or testing. You get 2 switches right here, the 2 black switches. That's going to either switch between your main BIOS and your backup BIOS, or it's actually going to turn your BIOS backup on or off. So a couple different functions there. They're explained a little bit more in detail in the manual. At the top, you also have some surface mounted buttons. So the main big red one right there is a power button. That will also light up when you have power going to the board. You also have a clear CMOS button right there, so that might be a little bit more easy to use than the jumper down at the bottom, and a surface-mounted reset button. Moving along to the memory, you have all of your DDR3 slots right there. They're color-coded, so the grays and the blacks. You will want to install at least 2 sticks of DDR3 memory, of course. It's recommended to use 1.5 volt memory. You can support up to 32 gigs. Intel officially supports DDR3 speeds up to 1600. It also supports Intel XMP profiles, but then you also can, of course, do overclock memory speeds as well if you so desire, but bear in mind that's going to depend highly on the CPU you have installed, because your mileage may vary when it comes to overclocking. That's just kind of, that kind of applies to just about overclocking in general. But speaking of CPU, your 1150 socket is located right there. That's where your Haswell processor is going to go. Again, don't try to drop in a Sandy bridge or an Ivy bridge right there. It will not fit, or if it does, you might break something and it won't work anyway. Next to that, you have your power delivery componentry. It's actually covered up a lot by the heat sinks, which are helping keep them cool, but you can see some of the chokes at least, as well as some of the capacitors providing power from the supplemental CPU power to the CPU itself. A couple nice beefy heat sinks on there to keep your MOSFETs nice and cool, especially if you're overclocking again. And then you've got a supplemental 8-pin CPU power connector right there, which of course you can plug in. And oh, we should also, I guess I should also point out, you got CPU fan headers right there, in case you didn't get them when I was in the wider shot. But there's your main and optional CPU fan header, supplemental CPU power connector right over there, and that about does it for all this. I guess there's one more fan header. That's that one right there. And again, I pointed that out in the wide shot, but if you wanted a closer look, that's also a 4-pin. Finally, inputs and outputs here at the back of the motherboard. First off, we have a combo PS2 port right there, so if you have an older, say, mechanical keyboard that still connects via PS2, you can still plug that in. You'll notice 2, 4, and 6 USB 3.0 ports. Again, those are routed through a hub and then directly to the Z87 chipset. You have some video outs right here, and this is because if you haven't followed Intel processors for the past few years, they do have integrated graphics these days. So you can actually roll without a graphics card, a discrete graphics card, I should say, and you can just use these for video outs. You got a VGA, you got a dual link DVI, you also have a display port as well as an HDMI, and I should also be able to tell you resolutions. From the D-sub and the DVI, actually that is not dual link, that's a single link DVI, that'll do up to 1920 by 1200. The HDMI can do 4096 by 2160, and the DisplayPort can do 3840 by 2160 max resolution. So there you have all your connectors. You also have an optical Toslink out here for your audio. There's the other 2 eSATA ports, again routed through the Marvell controller. There's your Intel NIC, and then finally all of your analog connections for your Realtek audio chip, including your microphone as well as your 7.1 channel audio outs. And that is going to wrap it up for this unboxing and overview. Once again, this has been the Gigabyte Z87X UD3H motherboard featuring the new Z87 chipset from Intel, as well as the 1150 socket for Intel's 4th generation core processors. I'm Paul with Newegg TV. If you enjoyed this video, you should maybe hit the like button down there. You should subscribe if you want to see more. And thanks for watching. We'll see you all next time.